Welcome to week 2 of D2 football's coverage of the national playoffs, or as I'm calling it, Monday Football Palooza. Our second show in a row. I've changed shirts just to make it look different.
Oh,
What do you think, guys?
Feel honored.
For those who weren't watching an hour ago, we had Super Region 4 that I hosted, and for those who couldn't get enough of me, they're here for more apparently.
You sweat the first shirt out, eh? Witt? Attaboy.
That's what it was. It was a sweat thing. But we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Super Region 3 football. For those tuning on in, we do have some coaches interviews and some new stuff that you wouldn't have caught any wind of on our Sunday night show. Not to mention, we have MIAA expert John Dykstra with us for his hot takes.
So
John, you look like you're full of energy there.
You get the smart people with the coaches interviews, and then you get my crazy takes. So
well, we settle for what we can get. We just have to settle for what we can. Hey. And we also do have the comments, and I can see we've got our guy Kobe from D1 Rejects here in the house with us. And so and by the way, Kobe, I caught some of his show this afternoon, and he put up a bunch of good content. Had the wide receiver from Central Oklahoma, whose name's not coming to mind, Terrell Davis.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, MIAA expert.
That's my role here.
Good boy, JD.
Yeah, and then we also have
to the Bronco running back, by the way.
No, that I'm old enough that Tony and I think that way. So yes, he's only a Hall of Famer after all. But
right.
And then we have a heckler in the crowd here. No, Chuck, you got me all wrong. We did not have time for me to have wings between the shows, but the idea of having them afterwards is definitely could be on my bingo card. But
past Chuck's bedtime. Like Chuck's up late for this one.
Yeah, wow.
And Chuck's not helping out either, man. I mean, what did we talk about on the show last night? I'm going to say that Witt had some cheese balls.
There we go. You know what? I wouldn't push away cheese balls right now, Tony. I'm not going to lie, but
again, those are cheese curds to me. But that's
Yeah.
Did I make an enemy out of AC? Man, me picking against these RMAC teams. AC's coming at me in the comments already.
AC, who was just on the on our other show, he's getting kind of chesty, like the RMAC teams were going to go down there and do what Harding did or something.
And it's not like I picked Pitt State. I got all this grief from Pitt State fans for picking them or picking Harding, and then it turns around on me.
Well, you are an easy target at times. Normally, I play that role, so. But yeah.
That's why you brought me into the family here.
Well, and apparently we've even got K-Ferg in the comments here as well. So I guess we're kind of keeping it within the family here tonight or something. And yeah, so the comments are if you're watching live, the comments are already on fire, as the kids would say. They would just say fire, not on fire. I got that all wrong.
I'm
old guy in the room. Sorry about that.
I'm just saying that's perfection. So
old guys in our prepositions.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, this just became a random chat that people have tuned in for. There's coaches and ADs who are tuning into this, going, people watch this, but let's go ahead and add a little bit of football to our conversation. Guys, I think most folks would say that this super region kind of was a little bit shocked because more people thought Harding was going to win that football game than they did, Pitt State by and large.
Including me, despite what the comments say.
Well, we're okay with you getting a hard time in the comments, deserving or not. And, our guy Ryan Gladwin made an interesting observation here that the MOV, which to me means movie, but what was 8.8, in other words, a scoring differential between the teams. And that was the lowest that we have seen in years. So, it kind of spoke to how a lot of these games went, but not all of them.
It was a very fun weekend of football, except for the game of the week, which was a dud.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go ahead and kind of we're going to flip some of the order of what we go over just to kind of make things a little different for those who tuned in from one night to the next. And we're going to go ahead and start on off with John's guy, Adam Dorrell. Now, I couldn't, Adam mentioned on our show about a month or two ago, John, on the MIAA show, about that he needed his players told him he needed more swag, so he got the CEO chain. So I see CEO chain, check, and he still has the old trusty towel as well. So
you can't leave the towel behind.
I was just going to say, so he had both of those items ready to go right then and there, and that kind of moves us on into their ball game, which was a heck of a ball game. And John, you obviously, we've joked around about how this has been kind of your adopted squad here in the MIAA. Before the season, John, remember when we were talking about the big three in the MIAA, which was Pitt State, Central Missouri, and Northwest Missouri State?
To be fair, it was a big two for me. You added the Northwest third. I'm trying. Well,
I think you had them going to the playoffs, but I'll let that slip. And and all of a sudden, the team that's representing the MIAA, the lone team left, is Central Oklahoma. And Coach Adam Dorrell has got his squad playing fantastic, and a little bit different style of football than you might have thought from him, which they're pretty high flying. Really athletic squad, not a real meat and potatoes type of group. And in terms of them trying to go ahead and play, power football and everything else that you may have hoped or thought from a guy, an old O-line coach. So you got a chance to see some of this one. What were some of your takeaways?
Some things I already knew. Terrell Davis, really good. Going to get Witt to learn his name eventually if he keeps playing like this.
Hey, I caught myself. That was good.
I mean, the biggest takeaway, the most obvious, is that name at the top there, Jet Huff. We did not have that on the old bingo card, as you'd say, with him playing the way Dawson Hurl has. Apparently, Dawson, listening to the radio broadcast a little bit on my way back from high school football, apparently he took some kind of injury in practice and was unavailable. So Jet Huff, a guy who about midway through the year was one of the front runners for the Hardland Hill, it's a pretty good backup plan to just stick in there and let him throw for 371 and three TDs there. So good, nice to plug him back in. He obviously was not playing the last few games too hard and took his opportunity and shined with it. And the underrated thing, we talk about the scoring and everything. UCO has been an elite run team all year, and Jalen Cottrell, you see it right there. 17 carries, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he set the tone early. He had a 73-yard touchdown in the first half of that first quarter there, and
let's go ahead and we'll edge you right on into that video as well, because they ended up having their pass rush was good in this one. And at the same time, you just mentioned Mr. Cottrell, and there's our guy again. He is a really athletic player, and I'll be interested to see if he gets loose at all this weekend up in Michigan at Ferris State. But a former receiver, and this offense, John.
Hey, wait! You made it to Edmond.
No, I haven't been down there in a while. But no, I mean their defense is going to try and get some sacks, and at the same time, as you mentioned, Jet Huff was going ahead and he can sling it.
There you go.
Now, during the last month or so, he's thrown it to the other team a few key times as well, and that's something to kind of be aware of, and something that he's going to need to kind of get right at Ferris. Because they have a fast group there in the secondary who can really get to the ball. But as we move on down the stretch, Wichita Baptist was
There's that
ahead
guy
with a
again.
few minutes left, and you see Cottrell there with a great run. But I think the bigger surprise for us really was I thought that Central might run away from OBU, and they didn't in this one. And OBU being up with a few minutes left, and Central having to kind of find their way here at the end, and you can see they make a great play, great catch as they go ahead, and it's a heck of an effort right there, and their first playoff win in over 20 years, and really noteworthy stuff at that point. Tony, what were some of the takes that you had from this game? Was this kind of how you figured it would play out? Central Oak would just have too much offense?
I did. There's actually a lot rattling around in my head about this, because we started talking about AD when it comes to this game, and you almost are starting to wonder, and this Saturday is going to be a real interesting dichotomy of this. Is he trying to, you mentioned earlier, I mean, this UCO team doesn't necessarily look like what we would think of as an AD
Right.
MIAA team. And if you stop and really think about it, Grand Valley and Ferris kind of look a little bit more like that older version of things these days than maybe they used to. And so, I mean, is this AD being ahead of the curve? Maybe I don't know. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing I took away from this game was, UCO was pretty much as advertised offensively, and in a lot of ways they were kind of as advertised defensively. And I think one of the things that stood out to me was Washita really, even as they were trying to make this furious comeback, really had some long odds against it to go down and get that last field goal. And, basically a check down to Kendall Givens turned into the play that set up that field goal because he just flat ran over a dude. And I'm thinking to myself, that lack of physicality, I'm real interested to see if that can translate against a team that's going to play with plenty of it this coming Saturday. So again, this game looked a lot like what I thought it would be. I give Washita credit; they held their own a little bit better than I thought they might. Yep. But it kind of reiterated for me and re-galvanized some thoughts of like, okay, I'm going to be real interested to see how Central Oak does when they get hit in the mouth a little bit, and they're gonna. Ferris is going to be ready for that.
Yeah, and our guy Ferg here mentions Kendall Givens had a great career for the Tigers and has been in the All-American conversation for years. Just a heck of a ball player, and I like the fact that people recognize how good he is, and then we've got our guy James W here. James, I'll be real honest. That's just total lack of class right there.
That's nice.
And so with that, let's have a little more class in the comments. I mean,
I'm confused. I thought James was a GAT guy.
No, he's a Harding crap on the rest of the GAT guy. So that's how that is.
When they beat you, that's a problem.
Yeah. So James, I mean, keep in mind they beat your squad. So I mean, that's a kind of a silly look at that point. But we'll carry on. This is a live show, and we kind of have fun. James mentioning he doesn't care about our feelings. Well, that's perfectly fine. James, we'll probably end up booting you out of the comments, if we're going to kind of continue to start in with others and all that and things of that sort. So that's fine, though. So we'll go ahead and kind of move into the next game, Indianapolis, going ahead with Grand Valley State in a game that we weren't really sure. We thought Indianapolis was going to be very much game here, and this was a 7-7 ball game, mid-third quarter, and then the Lakers were just able to go ahead and hit a few shots over the top because Indy was really committing to stopping the run game, and you can see that statistically there. And at the same time, Indy was able to move the ball at times, but not really have it be to the point where they were able to capitalize on it and, get the ball too much in the red zone and things of that sort. And, Tony, we're going to go ahead and watch some highlights here. I think, certainly one of the big things for Grand Valley week to week, and it certainly has been, is Avery Moore healthy? Is he able to play? Because he's so much of what they try and do in terms of their offensive identity.
Yeah.
So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look a little bit at some of this. But, I thought I stepped in at quarterback and was able to go ahead and play pretty capably here and go ahead and find some nice shots over the top as we go ahead and look at some of the highlights.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the things that gets overlooked is, Ike Udengu's got a history with offensive coordinator Ian Shoemaker. So it's not like he was brought in just as this known quantity. Let's take a flyer on the guy. So, when he finally got a chance to get some reps in practice and in the game, you said it exactly right, Witt. He played really well. I think another thing that, over as the game progressed, Grand Valley's defense in total, they may have given up some yards in some spots, but that pass rush was dangerous all day. And here again, that's another nice rollout throw by Udengo on the money, and he had plenty of those in this game. So while he wasn't flawless, he was more than sufficient. And this is another prime example that you were talking about, where the drawn-in defense committed to stopping the run, and the Lakers just throw it right over the top and get an easy score. So. I think just in total, there were a lot of question marks coming into this game just because of who's going to play quarterback for Grand Valley, how many offensive linemen are or are not going to play, how many guys on defense may or may not get some snaps, because there were some dings on that end as well. And yet the Lakers, despite the fact that this looked like a close game, and it was tied midway through the third quarter, the Lakers really just basically from that point on took complete control of it. And as you watch the fourth quarter unfold, you kind of never really thought Indy had that much of a chance at that point. It's just funny how that game could have been tied in terms of the score. And yet, very quickly it became something where you just kind of got the sense that Indy wasn't going to have enough to be able to pull it off.
Yeah. And, this kind of seemed like we kind of mentioned it the other night where, a certain risk that Grand Valley took of having confidence in Ike at quarterback to be able to make sure that they have Avery Moore as healthy as they think he needs to be able for them to take on that next level of teams in their effort to try and get to the championship in Texas. And we're going to go ahead and have some post-game comments here from Coach Wooster. And we'll go ahead and play those. And by the way, I did kind of forget to. We'll come on back to some of our coach Doral's comments after theirs as well. We've got quite a bit of those guys that we want to kind of supplement on the show this week.
I had the last couple of weeks banged up, dinged up. The linebacker position this week. 2 weeks ago was the offensive line. Obviously, the quarterback, and the belief and the response of this football team is just incredible. And give a major shout out to our training staff, Jim Winkler, Emily Aaron, and Layla Ali. Just doing some unbelievable work in that training room, getting these guys ready to go out there and do what they love, get them back doing what they love, who they do it with, and where they love doing it. But, obviously defensively, incredible performance. Said at halftime, told the guys that, that defense, we've been good, we need that great. And there was a time I think UIndy had that spurt, got the ball in the end zone. Offensively, it took a minute, but Ike, it was some big explosive plays, and we talked about the power of the explosive play. And
Tony, there's been times this year where I've kind of felt that was something that was not always there for the offense for Grand Valley, that explosive play. And, you go ahead and you have a few in a game like this. That's huge for a team that's got as good a defense as Grand Valley does. That's going to be able to carry the day in playoff football.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think a couple of things that we talked a little bit about yesterday on the show that you said that with the defense that Grand Valley has. Again, you look at the stats, and did Lewis have a nice day running the ball? Yep, he sure did. But he did that mostly when they had really wide splits, and basically Grand Valley was saying, all right, go ahead and throw it. because we know you're not going to break a long one on us running it.
Sure.
And then, you look at the stats for Sukup. I mean, Sukup was, one of the leading passers in terms of efficiency in the country coming into the playoffs.
Sure.
And you hold him to 9 for 28. That's some pretty heavy lifting by that defense. And I mentioned this on the show last night. Indianapolis's lone touchdown was that 36-yard read option that Sukup took to the house. That was the only snap Indianapolis took inside of Grand Valley's 40 the entire game. I mean, that's a team that was really having a hard time getting where it wanted to go.
Right.
And Grand Valley's defense was doing the work on that. And then I think, if you just look at the way that Coach Wooster talks about the team and the way they are, I mentioned this last night. This is a team that knows they haven't put a whole game together at any point this year. And yet they're still walking around picking fights with people. So, I mean, it's just, it's just hard to know what the limits are or when they're going to pick a fight with somebody that's going to take care of them, but they don't seem afraid. And if they play ugly games, it's cool with them.
Right. Yeah. And
it just is.
We were talking on my SR4 show about Bemidji State.
Yeah.
And
similar.
there's definitely some similar thinking going on there about it doesn't need to be pretty. We're just looking to advance to get another 60 minutes. So as we go ahead and we take a look at obviously the game that we were most interested in this weekend coming on in, we were thinking, game of the weekend. I had a great curiosity to see kind of how this would play out. And Harding, first quarter, they get they just don't look themselves. They have a fumble, they get picked, and just some of the adversity they haven't found themselves in a ton of this year. But the Pitt offense, 148 yards all day, and they were just not able. They couldn't get the run game going, which we didn't think they'd be able to, frankly, because Harding does such a great job against the run.
Yeah.
And last year, you had a team like UCM who was able to throw the ball on them and so forth. And my fear going in was that Pitt State has not thrown the ball effectively enough, and the Gorillas have not been good enough in the red zone to be able to really win a game like this. And John, you and I have talked about some of the challenges with their offense. Their defense has played great this year. And I thought that really hurt them in moments like this where they had a chance to capitalize early. They only got 3 when they could have kind of jumped out on Harding. And then all of a sudden the second quarter hits and everything churned.
Yeah, that offense has been, we all had kind of higher hopes for that all year, and it never really developed with the flashes Dotson has seen in the past. You kind of thought, okay, 3-year starting signal caller, with some depth at the running back position, few transfers at receiver. Like, this has a chance to be a really good unit, and it never quite became that. And jumped out to that 3-0 lead, but we're never able to add to it. And Harding obviously added a whole lot to it.
Well, let's go ahead and we're going to throw in some of that video next. And as we're taking a look at the action here, once again, probably the best attendance of any of the games, or right around a little over 5,500, I think they had, or something like that for this one. They get the field goal early. Here's the interception. Harding tries to kind of catch them there. So I think Harding threw 4 or 5 passes in this game, and one of them got picked, but one of them went for a score the other way, going pretty long. So then Harding goes out in the second quarter after having a reverse that was wide open that scored. Then they went ahead and scored there. Then you're going to see here this flea flicker just kind of ended up, that ball just kind of hung up, and Harding brings it deep back into Pitt territory and scores again. And all of a sudden this game was kind of off to the races. And I'll be honest, after watching UCM get up a fair amount on Pitt State, I knew this game was over because I watched that one before. And Pitt State is not a let's come from behind from 2 scores and be that kind of offense. And then Harding goes ahead and takes a shot down the field. They've been doing more of this year, where they've been trying to show some of that. I think it's a great idea, to be perfectly frank, because, it really makes it so that all of a sudden these defenses can't come downhill as much on you when you've got that threat a little more frequently in the game. And Coach, Paul Simmons talked a little bit after the game. We've got 2 little segments here I'm going to play, and then we'll come back for a little bit of chat about it.
I'll tell you what, I'm just really, really proud of our young men. I'm really proud of the coaching staff. Certainly, we have great respect for the Pitt State program, and I just thought that our guys did a tremendous job. Played with great discipline, played with great passion and love here in 2014, right. And jumped up 21-0, but we couldn't hold on to it, and so this was a better day today.
Your defense is so good too. Does it kind of get overlooked because your offense is so good? I mean, the defense kept you in the ballgame early while the offense was struggling in the first quarter.
Well, I don't know. I promise you, our defense doesn't get overlooked by the opposing OC or coaches. Those guys have been really, really elite, and yeah, early in the game, but we didn't play well. I look up and we got 2 turnovers, and we also extended 2 drives on third down penalties, but we're up 14-3. I thought, man, we're not playing well, and good things are happening for us. But the defense, we lead the nation in about 6 categories.
It was interesting, some of the questions he was being asked in the post-game presser. It was pretty apparent that the folks asking the questions were not aware of how good Harding's defense was, or that they had been pretty good.
What rock have they been living under?
So, but all that said, I think something that's not talked about enough with this program is how good of a guiding hand Coach Paul Simmons has with them. What he has done with what Coach Huck had before him and what he's taken over him. He was a DC back in that game at Pitt State in his only other trip there when they lost. Don't think for a second that hadn't stuck with him. So this was a bit of a get-back game for him after they had, that game 10 years ago where they kind of had the game and lost it. He was, him being the DC at that time and everything. I think what he has created with this program has just become a machine. And it's really something to behold in the day and age of all this other challenges that people have with trying to get a program going where, chemistry and everyone's kind of on the same page and cohesive. Boy, they've got it in spades there, don't they, John?
Yeah, they are. It's having Northwest play them as many years in a row as they did. I kind of got to see that as they were getting better literally every year and they've got this down to a science, this option, this offense. And then as you alluded to, I know the guy who asked the question there. I'm not gonna name his name here, but he's got a lot of irons in the fire. So we'll forgive him a little bit for that. But that defense is just keeps getting better as well. And when they've got both sides of the ball clicking the way they seem to right now, that's a hard team to beat. I will say a stat that didn't make it on the screen here. Braden J, 1 catch for 0 yards. I know my guy James W is not going to love that because he's been touting the 50 yards per catch all season, and now that's down to 42 yards a catch. So it's a rough day for Braden J and for James W.
Well, Tony, what was kind of your take walking away from that?
Well, I saw this as a potential outcome, if only for the fact that I think we've seen Pitt State just kind of not look like Pitt State over the back half of the season. And it was one thing for the offense to be a little bit sketchy at times, just because, they weren't a flashy offense when they, went to the regional semifinals last year. But I think to see the defense become that susceptible to just kind of losing grip of a game like that over the course of 60 minutes. I think that's what I found a little bit surprising, and it just it seemed like in that UCO game it kind of looked a little like that, Central Missouri game. I mean, it just seemed like that even that persona on defense of being able to hold it together and make things difficult for an opposing offense, even one that functions like Harding's does. It just seemed like that edge just seemed to dull as the season went on, and boy, it really got exposed here.
If you'd said before that a team was going to put up 48 points, you knew it wasn't going to be Pitt State. So you kind of predict something like this.
Yeah, when I saw that 24-3 at half, I was like, okay, this game's over with, and this is going to get real ugly. Totally agree with you on that, John. So as we go ahead and we kind of move forward, these are the kind of games that we want to see in the playoffs. Now, it'd be nicer in a perfect world if we didn't have regionalization. We saw it quite so early because this kind of feels more like a semifinal. But
I want to see, Witt, is I want to see Harding, or not Harding, but the GAC get rid of the insular schedule. We need to see this game in September.
Well,
get it when the weather's nice and the crowds are going to be big at both places. Do a home at home. I mean, that's what we need.
Well, and Harding being such a great program at this very moment in the way that they are going about things is probably not going to make the GAC feel like they need to get out of the silo scheduling. If both GAC teams had lost, Tony, and they had been 5th and 6th seeds as a result of the fact that they didn't play any out of conference and they had MIAA and they had GLIAC teams ahead of them, I think there would have been maybe a little bit more urgency within that GAC membership to do something like that. But when Harding's doing so good like this, I don't think there's going to be that much of a pressing interest.
I can't argue with you on that.
And it is what it is. But
it would be cool.
I would love to see that. I would love to see, for my own selfish reasons, Tony, I would love to see Harding and Ouachita and Henderson playing non-con with schools from either direction. Give me a Delta State playing some of those teams. They're right down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, Valdosta's and others. That would open some things up. I mean, right now, when you're taking a look at the Gulf South, who's looking for games and teams to play, that would have worked out great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, looked like our guy John fell on off. John, are you back and all good, my friend?
For the time being, at
you
least,
just had to make a bathroom break or something like that?
I just wanted you to see my frozen face for a little while on there. So,
you weren't frozen. You just, or maybe you were. I was talking with Tony. So, yeah.
Okay.
Suddenly, it was no longer
down went Dykstra. Yeah,
I mean, it was heartbreaking.
Well, let's go ahead. There's a team that's entered the chat here that we haven't talked about in this super region because, well, they've been watching football and haven't had to play it recently. So, Tony, we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a dive into this, Ferris squad. And as we take a look at it, they've won 10 straight.
Yeah.
They've developed this offense with really awesome balance. You take a look at the yardage, my goodness. And, the defense is very fast to the football. Tony, a few years ago when we were talking about Ferris on their championship run, they had a front four that was getting sacks and really kind of manhandling up front. This team seems to be really, really fast everywhere on defense and really fast to the football. And, when you look at this group right here, what are you more impressed with how they have turned out after that opener with Pitt? What they've done offensively or on the defensive side?
Well, you have to say what they've done offensively since then is the more impressive because, I mean, if you really look at it, the defense showed up for that game and played well. So there really wasn't anything, surprising about that side of the ball. And to say that Ferris's defense is more predicated on speed is not an unfair statement, but I also think it's an incomplete statement because guys like Victor Nelson and Deron Irving Bay and some of those guys up front are extremely good. So the difference is, you look back a couple of years ago when you've got a Caleb Murphy who's just a complete game changer in and unto himself, and you take that away from a team, and it definitely changes the complexion of not only that position group, but the defense as a whole. But there's almost a lull you to sleep aspect of it too then for Ferris at that point, because there's not that one name in specific that everybody has to focus on. There are lots of people that could cause you problems. Connor Neer coming back from Oklahoma to play his senior season at Ferris and having a great season leading that linebacking core. That's awesome. And you got, Justin Payout and Jarvis Alexander on the back end. There are dudes that can play all over this defense. Man.
Right.
So, it's going to be really interesting to watch in this game against Central Oak, and we'll talk about it more in a second, just from the standpoint that there aren't a lot of teams, really any teams in the GLIAC that look like Central Oak.
I had that same thought coming in. It's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. So I'm actually really excited about this game just from the standpoint that, okay, this defense is far more capable than probably people actually realize. And yet it'll be an interesting test for them because there wasn't anybody on their schedule that looks like what they're going to see Saturday.
Yeah, UCO has got a very explosive offense.
Yeah.
Maybe as good as anybody in Division II.
But to go back to your original question, the offense definitely is the more impressive piece just because they looked so out of sorts in that first game. And then to lose Carson Gulker in the first half of the second game that they played. So for this to all get thrust on Trent Chambliss's shoulders the way that it was, that's a tough spot, for anybody. And he's responded, as has the team. He wins the GLIAC Player of the Year award.
Yep.
And deservedly so. That just speaks to, what they had waiting in the wings in terms of, he wasn't the starter last year. He got some reps in a few spots. And then all of a sudden the whole team is his by, week 2 or game 3, if you will, and he just rolls with it. So, it's what the offense has done this year, despite not being maybe within Coach Anis's comfort zone of always liking to have 2 capable guys to do things. I think that's been probably the more impressive look.
Well, and, we talk a whole lot about Trinidad Chambliss, obviously, because he's their leading rusher. He does a whole lot of things for them, is quite the athlete. But, you've got guys like Brady Rose and Amari O'Brien who are kind of guys who do a little of everything for them.
Oh, yeah.
Anything from jet sweeps to, obviously catching the football. And, they've just got a variety of guys who are very productive and know their roles and are good athletes on offense. Mm-hmm. And at the same time on defense, they don't have one superstar that's got 100 tackles and, 15 tackles for loss. They're not on the field very long. They're not on the field for that many plays. And, you could have picked out a handful of guys on defense. We have here Tyrone Fowler, who I notice he gets around the corner and disrupts a lot of things for offenses. And I'll be real interested to see if UCO has some problems with him this week and kind of keeping track of him. And, this Ferris State team, they haven't played a ton of games that, when they played the Grand Valley game that we had, that was, obviously one that we talked about a whole lot, biggest game in the regular season. Yeah. Then they had Saginaw Valley that they played. And, of course, the way early in the season they had Pitt. It's one of those things where I remember talking with Coach Anis after their opener at Pitt. And I tell you, the look on his face at that time was not, we're going to run the table and be the number 1 seed. He was thrilled with the fact that they had kept that game that close at halftime. The defense had bowled their neck and really kept them in that game. And that's how good this defense is, because they got put in a whole bunch of bad spots in that opener. And I got to be honest with you, Tony, right now, that opener feels like a season ago with this Ferris team.
Well, it was, for all intents and purposes.
They just were so different then, and have come such a long way offensively, and the fact that they've been playing so well since then. So, that kind of leads us as we're moving along here. Obviously, they've got their game. First thing that caught my eye, John, you know how this is, being in the Central Time Zone. That's an 11 o'clock kick for me. I love that. So that's like free football for me, because with the way we have this thing scheduled where everybody's playing at the same time and everything else, them starting an hour early for me, maybe even 2 hours early, depending on like local 1 o'clock starts. And John, my Super Region 4 games are out in the Mountain Time Zone. So I am loving seeing some of that. And Tony, you kind of mentioned it. This UCO offense, very explosive. They've got balance. They'll throw it down the field on you and everything. It's going to be a real interesting test for Ferris. And if the weather comes into play, there's no doubt that that's advantage Ferris. I mean, there's no way around it. Ferris is perfectly fine if they don't have to throw the ball a bunch and can play that style. It's not really where UCO's trying to be. Quarterback runs like Ferris would and everything else.
Yeah, and what I would say is, and most coaches will allude to this, and a couple of guys you had on the SR4 show kind of all talked about this too. I think the fans tend to want, and maybe some of us in the media sometimes fall into the trap of making a little bit too much out of the weather, right, especially for teams that want to throw the football. I think they're far more worried about wind than they are precipitation or anything like that. And so if it's windy and gusty and blowing all kinds of nonsense around, all right, yeah, you might have something to talk about. Yeah. But if it's just kind of snowing or maybe a light rain or whatever else, and it's just cold, okay, man, it stinks. But is it going to impact the game that much? I think it's a little more negligible at that point.
I've known quarterbacks before that liked the snow games. They like the way it feels. Yeah, the wind's a different aspect, but it's the snow can be helpful. Rain, not many like that, but again, the wind is a bigger deal.
Well, that kind of moves us into our matchups here for the week, guys, that are upcoming. And we didn't. I did not hit the post game AD interview after UCO. I'm going to go ahead and play that now as we kind of lead on into the UCO Ferris State contest. And there's two bits to this, so have patience with me, guys, and we'll go ahead and check this out.
Yeah, I just was really proud of our team. I thought we beat a really good football team today. And obviously, it was never easy, and it never is in the playoffs. And so, hats off to Ouachita Baptist. I thought they played really good. Thought they had a really good game plan. Thought their guys played hard. That's a really good football team. And so, proud of our guys, because I don't feel like we played our best game today. I thought we had a lot of drops, had more mis-execution, offense, defense than we've had all year, and it led to some big plays for them and us not, potentially getting some big plays. But overall, when you can win a playoff game, survive and advance, I thought it was great. And then I just think our guys are gritty and resilient. There's times all year we've been behind or had to come back and had to keep scrapping, and again, today was another example of that. I just think.
Talk about your decision to go with Jet and talk about his game today. Threw for 300-some yards.
Yes, Dawson is currently working through a little bit of an injury that occurred last week. We're very confident. He could have gone today, but he probably wasn't going to be able to make every throw potentially that he needed to make. And so he was feeling great today, but we decided, because he hadn't practiced all week, to go with Jet. Jet had a really good week of practice. I thought he played really well today. So I'll tell you this, it's a good problem to have. I think a lot of people would like to have that problem. And, I know he's very confident he's going to be full build by Monday. And, we'll just go through the week and assess him. But I thought he played really, really well. He had that one bad pass, but got settled into the game, was step up in the pocket. I thought he did a great job of taking check downs. I thought his RPO decision making was really, really good today.
Well, so that brings it into the quarterback conversation a little bit here, John.
Ferris facing a team that has two quarterbacks, man, the role reversal.
The irony, right?
Yeah.
So John, you've obviously followed this league closely. You're very familiar with Dawson Hurl, who's been around the MIAA for a while. How do you see this playing out? How do you think they go about this come game day?
Well, when Jet was having the year that he was having, and then suddenly found himself out of the lineup, I did kind of question. Okay, have they lost Jet Huff now? Like, is he going to be looking? Where can I transfer to? All this stuff. To see him come out and have the game he had last week after dealing with that and probably being disappointed in that, that's pretty impressive. And the fact they have both those guys buy-in still, by all accounts. Yeah, like AD said there, that's a good problem to have. Like, yeah, if your quarterback gets nicked up in practice, like you said, most teams would have to play a Dawson Hurl that hadn't practiced all week. For UCO, they said, nah, get healthy, come back to practice next week. We got a guy who can do it. So kind of similar to Grand Valley in the conversation we were having earlier. It's nice to be able to know that you can do that if you need to there. And both guys have obviously proven capable.
Well, in the Grand Valley discussion, we talked about Avery Moore clearly being, Tony's alluded to this. He's not just a guy who kind of supplements the run game. He's 1A or 1B, depending on which order you want to put them in with Eichelberger.
Depending on the opponent, for sure.
Yeah, and they lean on him that much in the run game. Now, that said, how about for Central Oklahoma? You think Dawson Hurl maybe plays more of the +1 run game type stuff with them this week? And maybe Jet Huff is more of the passer. How do you see it?
Yeah, I could see that. It depends on the injury status and how. Just listen to AD talk there. He referenced making the throws, so that makes you think upper body injury probably, and that. So maybe they do use them as a run threat. Both those guys are capable of that, but Dawson's been more effective as it. That would be really interesting to see, and if there's packages for both guys to try to catch Ferris off guard a little bit.
Yeah, I get the guys. We know that if any times that programs are going to rely on the +1 quarterback run game, it's in the playoffs. It's times where you're more than willing to, hey, we may have to put our guy at risk a little bit because we're trying to win a football game.
It's going against the number 1 team in the country right now.
Right. If we don't get it done here, we're turning our equipment on Monday kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be very interested to see how UCO plays that hand out. I think we may see a little bit of both of the guys. And, if they end up going with one and things aren't going well by half, is there any reason you wouldn't go ahead and say, okay, let's see if we can switch the momentum here? So kind of keep an eye out for that in terms of our little viewer's guide on this football game. But that kind of brings us, though, to our picks here. Tony, I know that you had already kind of talked about this on our Sunday evening show. We've had a chance to get a little bit longer look here at Central Oak. You and I, when we make picks on that Sunday night show, it feels like the ink isn't even dry on the results from the Saturday.
Right.
Useless.
So, yeah. Well, that's fair enough, John. But that said, how do you see this one, Tony, and what are you looking for?
So if there's been any aspect of Ferris this year that has maybe at times think, I'd be interested to see how somebody could exploit that, it has been the back end of the defense. And I mentioned Jacarvis Alexander earlier. He's had a great season, but he's missed a couple of games. I don't know what his availability is going to be for this game or not. They had another good defensive back that I think got hurt against Grand Valley, where I think he's done for the year. So I'd be interested to see just how full go Ferris's secondary is. And obviously in a game like this, that's going to be pretty doggone critical. Now, how does Ferris possibly combat that? Well, if they can get a pass rush and make whoever Central Oak has back there uncomfortable, I think that could go a long way to determining things. Because I think Ferris is going to be one of the better run-stopping teams that Central Oak has seen this year.
Right.
So to me, it's how does that defensive front for Ferris impact comfort and pocket Do they force Central Oak to do more rollouts and things like that? And how does that front four and maybe even some delayed blitzing from the linebacking core help supplement maybe that back end that I wonder if it's as full go as Ferris would like it to be going into this game. So that to me is the biggest thing that I'm watching for, because I think Ferris is, Central Oak has. If they've seen an offense that's going to be this consistent and this polished and this multiple, I'd like to know who it is.
Right.
Maybe Central Missouri. And even then, the way that Ferris does this, I think, is a little bit more towards the physical than maybe how UCM does it. So Ferris is going to score a crap ton of points in this game. It's just a matter of, can their back end and can that pressure that the front puts on it on Central Oak do enough to hold up to keep the Broncos from being able to keep pace.
If you were guessing, Mr. Dykstra, which team has more sacks this year, who would you say?
I would say Ferris, but the way you phrase that question makes me think the opposite way.
I looked this up, and it is the opposite.
Yeah, it's well. You know what? Central Oak had 7 the other day against OBU, and they're at 33 sacks for the year, and Ferris is at 21. Now, when Ferris was on their run and they had the all-world DN whose name I'm not remembering right now, Tony. Yeah, I mean, he had that many sacks by himself.
Oh yeah.
But
the other thing to keep in mind though, Witt, is we've seen a shift in the GLIAC, and in part driven by the types of pass rushes that you see from the Ferrises and the Grand Valleys. Grand Valley didn't have a lot of sacks this year either, and that was one thing that I saw thematically when I was watching Ferris's and Grand Valley's games throughout the years. Teams were just trying to get the ball out more quickly.
Right.
And they were trying to roll pockets a lot more. And so, that's going to be that interesting, again, dichotomy in this one, because I think UCO is capable of doing all those things, but they also like to push the ball downfield, and that requires time.
Yes.
There's just no getting around that.
Yes.
They love those quick little swing passes and things, though, too. I mean, the highlights come from pushing it down the field. But
fair. That's fair.
It's a quick passing game a lot of times, so it's an interesting.
Hombre had 17 grabs the other day. You don't get those by going downfield all the time.
Yeah. That's for sure.
But that's the other thing of it, though, is Ferris does a lot of that too. So Ferris practices against that kind of stuff every day.
Yeah. This was a matchup that I think mid-season, when Central Oak was really cooking, this would have been like a dream matchup. But Central Oak's had some moments in that last month of the season where they were leaking oil a little bit, and makes you a little bit concerned that their defense is going to give up some points in this one and that they're going to be playing chase in this one. We'll see. Tony, I know you got Ferris. John, this is a real testy moment for you here, because do you have your towel there with you and everything?
I have Ferris, man, but boy,
I got my towel right here.
This is going to be. I think this is going to be a good one.
Is this a hill you're ready to die on? Tell me.
Well, Tony took my talking point there. They haven't seen a quarterback like Trinidad, or as talented as Trinidad Chambliss, since week 2 when they played Zabrowski. And they did sack him 6 times. He also had over 400 yards passing in that game. And they announced themselves in that game. They won it 57-40. And
right.
That's kind of what this game is going to have to be like. They're going to have to outscore them and find a way to do that. And I just don't think they can. I think Ferris's defense is too good. So,
I thought you were driving the bus there for a minute for UCO, and then
fast,
all of a sudden you stopped suddenly and got off.
Yeah. Ferris is just more balanced. That's the problem. It's Central Oklahoma can score with Ferris State in just numbers wise. I mean, you see it on the screen. They both average over 40. But Ferris State's going to get some stops, and I just don't know if Central Oak can get those stops. Maybe they'll surprise me, and the MIAA will have another week in this, but I'm not going to pick it. I would have Ferris State winning this game and win it maybe by a couple scores. I do think it'll be a high-scoring, fun game to watch, but I think, unlike our friend AC at the RMAC, I'm not going to go homer on this one, and I'm gonna go Ferris.
I
I
enjoy this Central Oak team. I would love to see them get on the board early and really make this interesting, because I think if they don't get on the board early, this game's not going to be real interesting.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that Ferris just controls the action from there, and it kind of becomes a one-sided game for them. So I'm really interested to see if Central Oak can go ahead and hit them a few times early with some plays down the field, or Cottrell can get loose, or Cottrell, their running back. But like you, John, I think I see this game very similar to you in that I just think Ferris State is too balanced. And this is a tough ask for a Central Oak team who didn't look great on the road this year. And at the same time, this is a long road trip for a team that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. So I am going to take Ferris here.
The MIAA lives another week if we've got the sweep here. So you don't have to kick me off the show for James W. So
yeah. Well, how about we've got Harding at Grand Valley here. Once again, Harding is playing in probably what's going to be the most interesting game. I would say that UCO Ferris game is pretty interesting as well. I'm kind of wondering which Grand Valley team shows up. Is it the Grand Valley team that kicked West Florida's teeth in, or is it the Grand Valley team that really struggled in some games with Saginaw and some others where I thought the old Grand Valley would have asserted themselves more offensively? Tony, it kind of seems like we're at that situation right now where I almost feel, I mentioned it on the Sunday night show, I almost feel like I'm getting played for the fool here by Grand Valley, and all of a sudden I'm going to flip that game on and it's 14-0 Grand Valley, and I go, ooh, yep, shouldn't have picked against them at home. You almost have a little bit of that feel to this.
I could see that argument. Witt, I'm with you. There's an element of this where I think the thing that what makes Grand Valley dangerous is that everybody thinks they're wounded. And sometimes the wounded animal is the one that you have to be afraid of the most, because they are that team that knows how to survive stuff. I mean, other than the Ferris game where the wheels came off completely, every time they've seen some kind of adversity this year, they've found a way to deal with it. And that's just kind of their MO. And so, don't have your starting O-line in a playoff game? No problem. Don't have your starting quarterback in a playoff game? No problem. I mean, it's just this game could end up looking exactly like Pitt State did last week, Witt. I'm not foolish enough to think that. It definitely could, because Harding is that predictable and that consistent, and that predictable is a good kind of predictable in terms of what you're going to get.
But you know what, though, Tony? I mean, I was talking about Mankato 2 hours ago, and Mankato's got some of those same problems. Beginning of the year, Mankato was clubbing people.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. Quarterback gets dinged up. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So... Now, Grand Valley's got a next-level defense, and I'll be the first to say that right here. And Harding does too.
Yeah.
So
in this instance, though, Witt, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but
yeah.
I think the thing that makes this game all the more interesting is there are only two teams that have done anything to stop Harding in the last, 27 games?
Right.
And this is one of them. Now, there's no guarantee that Grand Valley can do that again on Saturday, but they've shown they can do it once. And while the personnel is not identical, a lot of the personnel that's needed is pretty much the same guys as last year. And to me, the defensive front is absolutely critical. You got to take away the dive, and the linebackers are going to have to make a lot of plays. And Grand Valley's linebacking core this year probably doesn't get as much pub just because there's no Abe Swanson on it, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
But the guys on the back end that make tackles in space, it's pretty much the same 4, 5, 6 guys that did a lot of that work last year. It's the same ones that are going to be back there on Saturday. And if they're able to do that again, Grand Valley doesn't need a whole lot of offense. Now, last year they just still couldn't get enough, but
Right.
That's what makes this game so hard to handicap is, can Grand Valley pitch a shutout or a near shutout like they did last year? I just think that's an enormously tall ask. But again, when a team that, has its bread and butter taken away from it and still figures out how to win ball games is who you're against. Again, Harding doesn't see a lot of that, and it's week in and week out. And it saw a little bit of that against Ouachita earlier this year. But other than that,
right,
they don't see that. So it's how do both teams handle that weird sort of unpredictability that we're going to see in this one?
I feel like Harding, with the togetherness that this club has and the cohesion that they play with, I feel like they're the kind of team that won't be terribly affected by road trips and other things like that. At the same time,
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, we've kind of joked around about it that, with the weather and all that stuff, it looks like, in all likelihood, you're probably playing the game in the low 20s, in terms of, temperature and things of that sort.
Yeah, it's not going to be warm on Saturday.
Yeah. So it's going to be chilly.
It's a little hard to know, but it is going to be colder.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not going to be, snow and blizzard conditions and all that kind of stuff that might really, make it hard for Harding to execute that offense with precision. But at the same time, John, when you look at this contest here, you've heard Tony and I talk about it plenty over the last 24 hours. What's kind of some of your take as kind of a fresh set of eyes here?
I will say it is different. We just watched a Super Region 4 show where you compare a team from Minnesota going to the cold of Colorado, and you're like, that's not very different. Well, Arkansas versus Michigan is a lot different. That cold and all the ball handling they have to do and running their offense the way they run it, I could see that maybe coming into play. But like I said earlier, they've got it down to a science. So, yeah, also I could very easily see it not coming into play. But when I look at this, though, I see two elite defenses and I see one elite offense. Now, can the elite defense make the elite offense unelite for 1 week? That's what has to happen. And I'm with Tony. I don't know if they can do that 2 years in a row. I mean, they've got a better chance because I've seen it once now. But replicating that, Harding learning from that, that's a different thing. I think it helps Harding that they've had the one playoff road trip, like you said, to a big crowd in Pitt State, as you pointed out in the video, because last year, obviously, they didn't have to go on the road.
Well, they made a road trip to Texas to win. But
I was about to add, they had a pretty good home crowd at Texas, too, by hearing you guys talk about it afterwards. Bison Nation showed up. So, anyway, it helps going to Allendale, having that experience, I think, of playing in the jungle. So I don't know. That's the question. Can just like the last game, can Grand Valley score enough to keep up with Harding? Because I think they're going to have to score more than they did last year. That's for sure.
Well, and Joe in the comments here, I think, has something interesting. He said, there's a mental factor that can play big. Make no mistake, Grand Valley has not forgotten last year. And I think that's a fair point because
I think it's also a two-way street.
Yeah, but I mean,
make no mistake that Harding wants to win another national championship.
Yeah,
well, of
motivation should not be a factor in the playoffs.
But I mean, you ask players, they have a chip on their shoulder when things like this happen, and they remember who they lost to, and that ends up sometimes being a little bit of an extra thing. I realize you shouldn't have to get up for playoff games, but at the same time, this should mean a little bit more than just random opponent they're playing. Now, that said, John, which direction are you going on your pick?
Well, we talked off the air a little bit.
But nobody cares about that.
Well, it's hard these days. You throw me off the stream once, and now
I throw you, Tony, I threw him off the stream. That's what happened.
Anyway, we
We're
talked.
gonna make you go in the comments and do your pick from the comments.
We talked off the air about how good Harding looked on Saturday and how they might be the best team in the country right now. And if I had to pick a best team in the country right now, I think I'd say it's Harding. Now, making the run through Pittsburgh, Kansas, through Allendale, Michigan, potentially through Big Rapids, Michigan, I don't know if I would pick Harding to win the national championship right now, even though they're the best team, because that road is so hard. So I could see them tripping up in this, but I'm not going to pick against them again in this tournament. They have a hard road, but in every individual game, I think they are the best team at this point in the tournament. So I'm picking Harding to win a hard-fought, much lower scoring game than a few miles north there, but I think this is a Harding win, and I'm sure I'll get yelled at by Joe or by James for not picking by 40 though. So
yes,
can't win with this one, but give me the Bisons.
So Tony, you have you and I kind of talked about it last night. I took Harding. You took Grand Valley, and we both kind of had our reasons. And my thought is that I think Grand Valley still has a very high ceiling. Unfortunately, all I can go by right now is the actual production I've seen on the field.
Yep,
and it concerns me.
It's hard to argue.
And Harding. Kind of hard not to have some level of recency bias, seeing what
There's
they just did.
There's a lot of production on that field when you look at Harding.
Yeah, and so I picked Harding when we started this tournament, and I'm going to stay with him here. Tony, you took Grand Valley, if I remember correct.
At the beginning of the season.
Yep, and so what do you feel, Tony, being a GLIAC guy, what do you feel that Grand Valley has to do? Some of the keys for you. We know what Harding needs to do. What's Grand Valley need to do? A few kind of key points to win this football game.
Well, so the defense is going to have to do what it did last year,
right.
Which, again, I get that that's a tall order. But, they've shown that they've got the ability. And so their ability to deal with whatever adjustments or nuanced things that the Bisons are going to try to do to counteract some of that, or maybe trip them up a little bit. They've got to be ready for all those sorts of things.
Offensively, obviously, we don't think that they're going to be able to run the ball, probably, but do you think that they need to be able to hit a few shots?
Well, I think that's a given. I just think Grand Valley's going to have to be a little bit more balanced, and by that I mean, okay, if the offensive line isn't able to get something going, or the quarterback isn't able to get something going in the run game, or the jet action, or whatever it is, then you may have to see something that looks a little more like last week against Indianapolis, which is, okay, you throw it over them, and that opens things up. Grand Valley did run the ball a bit more effectively on their last couple of possessions on Saturday, because I think just continuing to chop that tree, it started to fall over a little bit. But earlier in the game, Grand Valley's ability to move the ball really centered more around when they were effective passing it. And they're going to have to be in this game. And so what does that look like? That is still a huge question mark. Is it end up being Ike Dengwu again? Does Avery Moore make it back? Do we see Vinny Meshi again? I genuinely don't know what the answer is to that. And again, while that normally would make you pick against a team and whatever else, again, I put my chips in and back in August. And so, where I come from, you can't pull your chips back off the table once you got them in the middle. So,
yep, I'm with you.
But at the same time, again, this is that team where they just seem to relish the unorthodox approach sometimes, and they seem to just figure out ways to win. So if they do that on Saturday, I won't be surprised by it.
Yeah, this is obviously a fantastic football game that we got lined up. This could be a semifinal in any other season, and the two games that we have in SR3
final in a lot of seasons.
Yeah, the games we have in SR3 are truly fantastic games. I wish that they were staggered. I could watch one early, one late, but that's the fantasy land I live in when it comes to the Deuce.
Tony, before we close this out, I haven't heard this anywhere yet, but was Avery Moore suited up on Saturday? I didn't catch that anywhere. Everybody's kind of assuming he's playing this game, it feels like, but was he available Saturday if that game would have went differently?
That is not an assumption I am making at this point, because I genuinely don't know. I don't believe he suited last Saturday, but I honestly don't know the answer with absolute certainty in that regard. I don't think he did. And I have no idea whether he's going to dress for this Saturday or not either. I genuinely don't know.
Be on it in the comments, and he said he was not suited. So
okay.
Yeah, John, I'm the one probably overextending myself, thinking that this is going to be the game that he is going to make sure he's ready for.
Well, yeah, it's not just you. I've kind of assumed that last week was kind of a get healthy week for him, but
yep.
I don't.
Well, because he had played in the previous few weeks leading up to that.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. Absolutely. Well, for everyone tuning in who was not aware of it and didn't watch any D2 football last week, welcome to the show. No, ESPN Plus is going to be the provider for the games. I'm going to mention this because I think a few people had some hard time finding it. If you don't see your game in the immediate, scroll, then just go ahead and do a search for your team in the search thing. Because it's, I've kind of found that there's a little bit of that going on with some of these games when you try and find them afterwards. I do need to thank a whole lot of people that have helped us with video and whatnot, this week. Anything from obviously at UCO, their media department helping us out, getting some post-game press conference stuff. All the way to Harding doing the same with their press conference, and then Grand Valley as well. We like to add some of that stuff on these shows that we don't necessarily have, that we're going to throw on the Sunday night show, just to give you guys a little bit of a different twist to this and a little bit of more info and more depth to it than what we had originally. I also want to mention, and we're going to start doing this a little bit more as we finish out the year. We've got about 2,300 subscribers on YouTube, but yet on Twitter, I want to say, guys, John, what do we have? About almost 30,000. So we need, if you're watching on YouTube right now, click to subscribe, because we've been putting out a whole lot of content this year. If you're a fan of D2 football, this is the place where you need to be. We've got tons of content throughout the week, the Sunday night show and everything else. We've got 2 shows that we did tonight, Super Region 3 and 4. And then as our week kind of, as we continue here, even though it's the short Thanksgiving week here, we will have the SR1 and 2 shows that will be popping up. Check your local listings or your TV guide, right, Tony? To see where that's at. John's looking at going, TV guide, what's he talking about?
It's a periodical.
It's even a thing.
So you can flip through on the remote. It says guide on the side of the TV. Yeah.
That's not at all what we're talking about.
I definitely know what a TV guide is. So
okay, fair enough. But well, guys, I appreciate everybody jumping in the comments, and John and Tony, we did not go nearly as long this week without the Northwest news and stuff like that. So, Dykstra, I blame you for that a week ago.
We can talk some Drake basketball and D2 taking over the Missouri
John, I
Valley
love you, but
Conference.
we don't talk about basketball on this programming.
I knew that would trigger you a little bit. Triggering you and triggering James is my hobby.
Yeah. So, well, guys, I appreciate you guys making time out of your busy schedule to do this, and for everyone that's tuned in, thanks once again, and we will see you guys out at the games.